One of the most famous of all the heroes in ancient Greece was Odysseus, king of Ithaca, who took part in a 10-year siege of the proud city of Troy. When at last the Greeks captured and destroyed Troy, Odysseus and his comrades set the sails and manned the oars of their wooden ships, thinking how good it would be to see their homes and wives and children again. In order to reach Greece quickly, Odysseus decided that he'd need the help of one of the gods. So he ordered the sails to be set and the rowers to pull on their oars, until at last they sighted a great floating island, surrounded by high walls of burnished bronze which shone in the sunlight. "This must be the island of Aeolus, the god of storms and of winds," the men cried as they sailed into the harbour. When Aeolus heard that his guests were the Greek heroes who'd fought for 10 long years at the siege of Troy, he ordered a great feast to be prepared for them. This included all kinds of fish and octopuses and eggs of seabirds and honey cakes flavoured with wild thyme. Aeolus and his court listened, fascinated, as the Greeks talked of the brave deeds of heroes, such as Paris and Menelaus, of Hector and Achilles. Finally, tired out, the Greeks drew their cloaks around them and slept. All except Odysseus and Aeolus. "It was not chance that brought the king of Ithaca to visit me here in my island home," Aeolus said, looking at Odysseus. "No, Aeolus, it was not chance," Odysseus said. "I've come to seek your help, for without it I fear that none of us will ever see the rocky coast of our homeland again." "In what way can I help you?" Aeolus asked. "Give me a gentle west wind to fill the sails and blow us back to Greece," Odysseus answered. "My winds quarrel among themselves, just as your heroes do," Aeolus replied. "A west wind would be of little use if all the others were free to blow you off course whenever the mood took them." "As god of the storms and winds, you can command them to leave my ships alone," Odysseus said. "I can do better than that," Aeolus said with a smile. "Come outside into the palace grounds with me." Following the god of the winds out into the starlit night, Odysseus watched as Aeolus gathered together all the winds except the west wind. He placed them in a bag made from the skin of an ox, fastening the mouth of the bag with a silver thong. "There," he said, giving the bag to Odysseus. "Now you're in command of your own fate. Keep this bag closed and the winds imprisoned, and the west wind will blow you straight back home." Thanking Aeolus warmly for his help, Odysseus returned to the harbour, spending the rest of the night seeing that the boats were stocked with wine and stores of barley bread, salt mutton, dried grapes, figs, and fresh honey. The next morning, well fed and refreshed by their sleep, the Greeks returned to the harbour and embarked once more. They were delighted to see that the west wind was filling their sails, so that when they pulled at the oars, the ships sped away from the island, across the calm blue seas. Suddenly, one soldier said to another, "Do you see that great leather bag fastened with a thong of silver? I don't remember seeing it on the ship before." "Neither do I," the other soldier replied. "Odysseus must have brought it aboard while we were sleeping," said a third soldier. "There's something strange going on," said another. "Late last night I heard Odysseus whispering to Aeolus, and then they went outside together. I think that bag contains treasure." The day grew hotter and hotter, and the men rowed without effort as the west wind filled the sails. Odysseus, thinking that everything was under control, leaned back wearily against the pine tree mast and closed his eyes. "Look," whispered the first soldier. "Odysseus is asleep. Now's our chance to find out what Aeolus has given him and to share it out amongst ourselves." Drawing his dagger, the first soldier crept forward past the sleeping Odysseus and cut the bag from the mast, slashing the silver thong. Pulling open the mouth of the bag, he plunged his hand inside, eager for the gold and silver coins, the engraved cups and brooches he imagined were there. But the next moment he yelled in terror, as the winds, enraged at having been shut up for so long, roared out, knocking him off his feet and flinging him against his comrades so that they too cried out in alarm. The angry shrieking of the winds and the terrified cries of his men awakened Odysseus, who sprang to his feet. "What has happened?" he cried. And then he saw the empty ox-hide bag being blown hither and thither on the deck. "Who let the winds loose?" he demanded. At that moment, the lookout, pointing into the distance, cried, "Home! We're home at last!" If it had been left to the west wind, they would have been home that day. But now the north and the south and the east winds roared about their ears and whipped up the seas, and though the men lowered the sails and pulled on their oars till the muscles of their arms ached, they couldn't make any headway against the quarrelling winds, which drove them back the way they'd come, back to the bronze-walled island of Aeolus. When Aeolus heard the roar of the winds and saw the storm-tossed ships approaching his land for the second time, he knew that Odysseus must somehow have offended a god who was greater than he, and so he refused to help him again. "Now you must take your chance on the seas, as do all others who sail on them," he said. And the winds laughed spitefully, driving the ships ever to the east, so that it was many years before Odysseus and his comrades returned at last to Greece, to their homes and their wives and families.